Imagine walking out onto your back deck at dusk. You flip on the porch light, and instead of just a quiet, empty yard, you are instantly greeted by just a sea of glowing eyes.
Yeah, which sounds terrifying, honestly.
Right. But these aren't monsters staring back at you. They are 20 to 30 impossibly round, just aggressively hungry raccoons.
And they're all looking at you like you were a waiter who, just forgot their appetizers.
Exactly. Now, for those of you who already follow this incredible story, the story of James Blackwood, the retired Nova Scotia Mountie known as the Raccoon Whisperer, well, you know exactly what visual spectacle we are talking about.
Just absolute chaos.
It is. But today, we're going way beyond just those viral clips. We are pulling from a whole stack of wildlife biology studies, some linguistic history, and even the underlying YouTube analytics of his channel.
Yeah, to really understand the hidden machinery of this nightly Michelin star diner he's running.
Our mission for this deep dive is to dissect the absolute biological chaos and really the profound emotional legacy that keeps this wild ecosystem running.
It's such a remarkable intersection of nature and human routine. Because when you actually look closely at the source material, you don't just see a gentleman feeding waddling, greedy animals that, act like house cats.
Right, there's so much more going on.
Exactly. You see complex evolutionary behaviors just colliding head-on with an unlimited modern food supply.
So we're going to examine the physiological mechanics of how these animals process information, the logistical reality of maintaining this woodland buffet, and this really beautiful psychological concept called unconditional allowance.
Which is really the fuel for the entire operation.
Let's start with the sheer volume of calories on that deck because, it is just staggering. We're not talking about tossing out a few apple cores here.
Oh no, not even close.
James is out there distributing 5 pounds of hot dogs, which, by the way, he meticulously cuts in half. Plus, literal buckets of great value vanilla creme cookies, piles of grapes, dry kibble.
And on special occasions, Tim Hortons donuts.
Yes. The donuts. And the raccoons are so gorged that their bellies are practically scraping the wood as they waddle away.
They really are.
Watching this, my immediate biological puzzle is like, how are animals carrying this much weight surviving in the deep woods? They look less like agile foragers and more like walking biological water balloons filled with hot dog syrup.
That is a very vivid image.
How does their wild metabolism handle this premium catering without just, failing?
Well, that is the core paradox that viewers constantly bring up, right? To understand how they survive, you really have to look at the harsh reality of rural Nova Scotia.
Right, because it gets incredibly cold up there.
Exactly. And raccoons, they don't fully hibernate. They enter a state called torpor during extreme cold, which basically means they still need to wake up and forage occasionally.
So they aren't just sleeping the whole winter away?
No, not at all. Biologically, they are essentially required to become absolute units before the snow falls. Their bodies are designed to convert massive amounts of high-density calories into this thick layer of brown adipose tissue.
Brown fat.
Right. And that fat acts as both a thermal blanket and a slow-burn biological battery.
So the extreme roundness we see on the deck, it isn't a health crisis at all. It's a necessary winter survival suit.
Precisely that. Because during the day, they are burning a staggering amount of energy simply navigating that rugged terrain, climbing massive pines, and just, thermoregulating.
Trying to stay warm.
Yeah. So when they hit James's deck, their bodies are cashing in on an evolutionary jackpot. The wild lifestyle acts as a high-intensity furnace that completely balances out the sheer caloric load of hot dogs and vanilla cookies.
Honestly, knowing they aren't about to pop definitely makes watching them a lot more fun.
It really does.
And the specific behaviors they display on the deck are just comedic gold. Like the grape head jolt is a perfect example.
Oh, the head jolt is fascinating.
Yeah. A raccoon will pop a single grape into its mouth, freeze, and then aggressively vibrate its entire head while chewing. It's like watching a tiny furry vacuum cleaner short-circuiting on maximum power.
That is exactly what it looks like.
What is actually happening in their nervous system when they do that?
It basically comes down to a massive sensory overload of their olfactory and gustatory systems.
Okay, smell and taste.
Right. Because in the wild, raccoons are used to pulling up grubs or hard nuts, maybe some fibrous roots. A modern grape is essentially a cultivated water bomb of pure fructose.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, so when they bite down, That sudden, explosive burst of concentrated fruit juice just overwhelms their sensory receptors, and that results in that rapid, involuntary headshake.
It's literally a sugar shock to a brain that's wired for slow foraging.
Exactly. And what's wild is they do all this while completely ignoring the rest of the wild ecosystem operating right around them.
Right. You'll see Stubby, who is this regular raccoon missing his tail, and he'll be deep into a pile of kibble. And suddenly this massive blue jay will swoop down from the dark, snatch a hot dog right off the deck, and fly away.
And the raccoons don't even flinch.
Not even a little bit. Why do they just let the bird rob them?
Well, the threat matrix of a raccoon is highly situational. Ordinarily, yeah, a swooping bird might trigger some kind of defensive response.
Sure, you'd think they'd protect their food.
But on this deck, the sheer abundance of food completely alters their risk assessment. The cost of stopping their caloric intake to defend one single hot dog against a bird is neurologically deemed unnecessary.
Because there are literally 40 other hot dogs sitting inches away.
Exactly. Why fight when you can just grab another cookie?
That makes total sense. And you add in the camera flashes under the heavy deck lights, catching those giant, blurry mosquitoes.
Oh yeah, they look like glowing drones hovering over the food.
They really do. The whole scene just feels like a bizarre fairy tale. But beyond the comedy of their eating habits, there's a very specific mechanical process to how they interact with the food.
The dousing behavior.
Yes, the classic dousing. You see them grab a cookie and immediately dunk it into the water bowls James leaves out.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the common assumption was that they were washing their food, right?
Oh, absolutely. The washing myth is deeply, deeply embedded in our culture. I mean, to the point where their scientific name, Procyon loader, literally translates to washer.
Wow, so even the scientists thought they were doing laundry.
Yeah, initially. But wildlife biology paints a much more sophisticated picture of this mechanism now. Raccoons are not concerned with hygiene at all.
Shocking, given they eat out of garbage cans.
Right. The secret is actually in their hands. The skin on their front paws features an incredibly dense network of tactile mechanoreceptors.
Okay, nerve endings.
Specifically Pacinian corpuscles, which detect pressure and vibration.
So their paws are heavily wired for touch. But how does the water change that?
Well, the outer layer of their paw skin, the stratum corneum, is tough and calloused from all that walking and climbing.
Sure, they don't wear shoes.
Right. But when a raccoon dips its paws into water, that tough outer layer absorbs moisture and becomes incredibly pliable. This softening process dramatically increases the sensitivity of the nerve endings underneath.
So by dousing their food, they are what? Enhancing their sense of touch.
Exactly. They are essentially increasing the bandwidth of tactile information flowing straight to their cerebral cortex.
Okay, so the water acts almost like reading glasses for their fingers.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, yeah. Because to a raccoon, most of their sight is actually processed through their hands.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Almost 2/3 of their sensory perception area in the brain is dedicated to tactile impulses. Wetting the food allows them to see the texture, the density, and the structure of the object with high-definition clarity.
Which means they're dipping the vanilla cookies into water to fully experience the texture before eating it. That is wild.
It is.
And the sources mentioned other animals interacting with water, but for entirely different non-sensory reasons, right?
Yeah, there is a stark contrast when we look at primate behavior, for example. Scientists once conducted an experiment giving baboons sandy marshmallows.
Gross.
Right? And the baboons immediately took the candy to a stream to rinse the sand off. They were employing pure problem-solving logic to avoid chewing grit.
Okay, so they actually were washing it.
Yes, and similarly, Japanese macaques famously began washing sweet potatoes in the ocean back in the 1950s. They did it initially just to clean off the dirt, but they soon realized the salt water functioned as seasoning.
Oh, that's brilliant. Salted sweet potatoes.
Yeah, and that behavior was then culturally transmitted through the entire troop. You even see crows soaking stale bread in puddles simply to soften it enough to swallow.
But the raccoon is unique here.
Completely. The raccoon is utilizing water purely to augment its own neurological sensory hardware.
Okay, so we have these highly sensitive, sugar-shocked animals gorging themselves. But the logistical mystery to me is how 30 independent raccoons coordinate to show up at this specific location deep in the woods.
It's not like they have a group chat.
Right. They aren't traveling in a unified pack. So how is the word spreading?
The coordination relies on this multi-layered biological communication network. We can kind of think of it as the raccoon telephone line.
I love that. How does the telephone line work?
The foundational layer is entirely chemical. Raccoons possess specialized scent glands. So, when an extremely well-fed raccoon leaves James's deck and travels back into the woods, it leaves a distinct trail of lipid-based pheromones.
Okay, so they're leaving a scent trail.
Exactly. And these oils don't freeze easily, meaning they persist in that cold Nova Scotia environment. To another foraging raccoon crossing that path, those pheromones act as a highly visible chemical neon sign pointing directly toward a high-calorie reward.
So the scent is acting as a localized GPS that gets them to the area, but what about when they are actually near the deck?
That brings us to the acoustic layer. Raccoons utilize over 12 distinct vocalizations.
Wow, 12.
Yeah. And when a group is actively feeding on something high value like those grapes, they emit a very rapid chittering sound. The acoustic properties of this specific frequency allow it to cut straight through the dense ambient noise of the forest.
So they're broadcasting a dinner bell.
Basically, yes. It functions as a broadcast signal, alerting any nearby raccoons that a jackpot has been found.
So you have the chemical trails leading them in, and the auditory broadcast pulling them out of the trees in real time.
And layered on top of all of that is pure visual opportunism.
What do you mean?
Well, if a hungry raccoon notices its neighbor looking robust and healthy, and that neighbor is marching purposefully in a specific direction every single evening at dusk, instinct dictates they just tail that neighbor.
You just stalk the fattest forager in the neighborhood.
It is basic survival tracking.
That makes so much sense. But the sources highlight one more layer to this network, and I think it really explains the sheer longevity of this nightly event.
The generational memory?
Yes, tell us about that.
Raccoon mothers are fiercely protective, but they are also highly educational. Once a mother identifies a safe, calorie-rich environment, she actively brings her newly mobile cubs straight to the source.
So she's passing down the map.
Exactly. She teaches them the route, she demonstrates that the environment is secure, and she establishes that the human-present James is not a predator. This creates an unbroken chain of geographic memory.
And the trust runs deep, right? The sources mention something called cub sitting.
Oh yeah, the trust is so deep that mothers will engage in cub sitting. They will literally leave their unweaned babies on the safety of the illuminated deck while they go back into the dark woods to forage more safely.
That is incredible. They treat his deck like a daycare.
They really do. Some have even learned to utilize a motion detector sensor on the deck that triggers a doorbell inside James's house.
Wait, they ring the doorbell.
They do, effectively demanding room service.
Ringing a doorbell for hot dogs is terrifyingly smart. But, stepping back from the biology for a second, we have to look at the human logistics here.
It's a massive undertaking.
Maintaining this woodland diner is wild. Feeding 30 animals premium snacks every night equates to roughly a $4,000 a month grocery bill.
Yeah, that's huge.
A retired Mountie simply cannot sustain that out of pocket forever.
He certainly couldn't. I mean, for years when the group was smaller, James subsidized it himself, spending maybe a few $100s a month.
Which is still a lot for retirement.
Right. But the dynamic shifted entirely in 2020 when his footage went viral. He tapped into a completely unique internet ecosystem. Today, his YouTube channel sits at exactly 666K subscribers.
Which creates a really fascinating juxtaposition. It's like the most metal subscriber count imaginable for the most wholesome content online.
It really is.
The internet loves irony.
Oh,
And those viewers are essentially footing the bill now.
completely. The ad revenue generated by viewers watching the videos covers the massive grocery overhead. Local fans send donations, and even a nearby pizzeria contributes supplies.
So the raccoon's own highly engaging behavior essentially generates the capital required to feed them.
Exactly. And this allows James to operate a dedicated logistics hub inside his home. The footage reveals a room that looks like a tactical survival bunker.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But instead of rations, it features floor-to-ceiling stacks of giant Olroid dog food bags and structural walls made entirely of vanilla creme cookie boxes.
It's a literal distribution center for wildlife. But here is where we have to look at the friction in this ecosystem. Because despite this premium all-you-can-eat catering, the raccoons are undeniably terrible guests.
Oh, they are so rude to each other.
The videos show them aggressively biting each other, swatting and growling over individual hot dogs. And they are incredibly messy.
The pizza crust analogy?
Yes, the sources use this brilliant analogy. James hands out sandwich cookies, and the raccoons use those sensitive paws to meticulously split the cookies apart, lick out the vanilla cream, and leave the cookie crust scattered all over the deck like trash.
Leaving the crusts behind. Typical.
But why are they behaving with such intense scarcity panic when the supply is functionally infinite?
It is a fascinating clash between ancient evolutionary programming and modern abundance. Raccoons are inherently solitary foragers.
Okay, so they don't naturally share.
Right. They do not have the social infrastructure of, say, a wolf pack to distribute resources. For millions of years, their brains have been hardwired with a strict rule. If you find a high-value calorie source, you defend it aggressively or you starve.
So when they step onto James's deck, that deeply ingrained amygdala response doesn't just turn off just because there is a mountain of food.
Exactly. The sheer density of resources actually heightens the instinct to guard their immediate vicinity.
It's easy to judge them, but honestly, think about human behavior during a crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
We've all seen footage of people physically fighting over toilet paper or bottled water at a grocery store, even when there are pallets of it sitting right in the back.
Yeah, when an ancient scarcity mindset meets a crowded environment, the brain just short circuits.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play. Add in the spatial constraints of a wooden deck, and all that biting and chittering is also a fast-tracked method for establishing a temporary social hierarchy.
They are just rapidly sorting out who gets priority access under extreme sensory pressure.
It's biology crashing into unlimited cookies. Now, the cultural footprint of these animals is massive, and digging into the history of the word raccoon reveals a lot about how humans have perceived them historically.
The linguistic history is actually a direct reflection of that tactile behavior we discussed earlier.
Oh, the hand rubbing.
Yes. The word originates from the Powhatan people, an Algonquian-speaking indigenous group in North America. Their word was arathcone, which specifically translates to one who rubs, scrubs, and scratches with its hands.
Which perfectly encapsulates their reliance on those highly sensitive front paws.
The physical description was entirely accurate, but when English colonist John Smith encountered the animal and attempted to transcribe the word in the early 1600s, he spelled it Raugrugchcum.
Rogocobum. That is a mouthful.
It really was. Over the centuries, linguistic smoothing compressed that unwieldy spelling into just raccoon. Interestingly, there is still a geographic divide in the spelling today.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, American English heavily favors the double C's, R-A-C-C-O-N, utilizing the double consonant to keep the preceding vowel sound short. However, the single C variant remains completely valid and is frequently used in British and Canadian English.
Well, given the sheer density of the Nova Scotia raccoons, they absolutely require the double C just to support the extra weight.
That's a fair point.
But their public relations rely heavily on that specific round, masked aesthetic. Because historically, when raccoons adapt differently, they lose that charm entirely.
You are referring to the visual shock of the extinct Barbados raccoon.
Yes, the photos in the source material are deeply jarring. The Barbados raccoons suffered from island dwarfism.
Right, which is an evolutionary process where animals shrink over generations due to limited island resources.
And they officially went extinct in 1964. But if you look at the surviving taxidermy, they lack the thick winter fat, the fluffy cheeks, and the pronounced black mask.
Yeah, without those features, it looks like a skeletal, wide-eyed ghost, or just an incredibly unsettling possum.
It really does. It completely strips away the cute backyard bandit persona. It highlights how much their specific bulk and facial markings protect them from being viewed purely as pests.
It is a crucial point regarding human empathy. We project a lot of our own affection onto aesthetics.
Which brings us perfectly to the profound emotional core of this specific story. Because why does James subject himself to this?
It's a fair question.
Managing the logistics, enduring the freezing winds of Nova Scotia nights, cleaning up the mess of the cookie crusts, and navigating the aggression of 30 wild animals, it requires immense dedication.
It does. And this is where the narrative shifts from a quirky internet phenomenon into a deeply moving human story. It all hinges on a 20-year promise.
This part is just heartbreaking.
It is. In 1999, James and his late wife, Jane, found a severely injured raccoon. They rehabilitated it and eventually released it back into the wild, but that animal kept returning and eventually it brought its own offspring.
So they started a relationship with a local wildlife.
Yeah, Jane developed a profound connection with them. Tragically, before she passed away from cancer in 2003, she asked James to promise that he would continue to look after her furry friends.
And he has honored that commitment every single night for over 2 decades.
It is a remarkable testament to grief, love, and loyalty. And a vital element to understand here is the ecological reality of his commitment.
What do you mean by that?
If James were to simply stop opening his door tomorrow, the raccoons would not perish. Their natural torpor cycles and wild instincts would immediately re-engage.
They just go back to being normal raccoons.
Exactly. They would return to foraging for grubs, amphibians, and nuts. What would be destroyed is not the animals themselves, but the generational chain of trust.
That invisible map passed down from mother to cub over 20 years would just vanish.
Exactly.
What really stands out to me is James's philosophical approach to this daily ritual. He operates on this principle of unconditional allowance.
Yes, that's the perfect term for it.
He doesn't try to domesticate them or enforce boundaries. He just sits on that freezing deck watching them fight over hot dogs. He just chuckles.
He finds joy in it.
He does. He doesn't demand gratitude. He doesn't withhold cookies until they behave. He simply provides a safe space and allows them to exist in their chaotic, authentic state.
That is a very profound psychological stance. Unconditional allowance removes the ego from the act of caregiving. He is not feeding them to feel powerful or to control nature.
He's doing it simply to witness life unfolding.
Exactly. And that gentle, accommodating nature isn't just reserved for the wild animals outside. It permeates his entire life, especially when you look at the brilliant contrast of his indoor ecosystem.
Oh, the indoor hustlers. His cats, Connor and Charlotte.
They are hilarious.
They're operating on a completely different level of psychological manipulation, while the raccoons are outside physically brawling.
The cats represent the absolute apex of domesticated privilege. Connor, for instance, runs highly coordinated operations.
Oh, he's a mastermind.
He will approach James's daughter, Angie, feigning extreme hunger to secure a treat. The moment he finishes, he marches straight into the other room to James, acting completely ignored and neglected.
And he successfully manipulates a second round of treats out of the system.
A flawless double agent routine.
And Charlotte doesn't even bother manipulating. She just demands absolute service. She insists on being fed her treats exclusively on the kitchen counter.
And James accommodates it entirely. He frames it as a mutual benefit, saying he trains her to eat on the counter because it saves him the physical strain of bending down.
It's just a harmonious, low-friction environment inside. I mean, this is a man who cares for his grandchildren, who remotely manages the thermostat of his home with his daughter across the border because, the smart technology is a bit overwhelming.
And he proudly illuminates his living room with a custom LED neon sign that reads, Jim's Diner.
And out on the deck, he has a sign featuring a raccoon that simply says, "Don't tell me what to do."
He has fully embraced the branding of the chaos.
He really has. He didn't just keep a promise, he built a sanctuary around it. To pull all of this together, we are looking at a retired man who transformed immense personal loss into a vibrant, multi-generational legacy of interspecies trust.
Yeah, that's beautifully put.
By leaning into the sheer, uncompromising reality of wild animals, he inadvertently spawned a global online community, creating an ecosystem funded entirely by the adorable greed of the animals themselves.
It really forces us to look differently at the spaces we inhabit. We've spent this time dissecting how raccoon mothers utilize pheromones and acoustic chittering to pass down the exact coordinates of a safe, friendly wooden deck across multiple generations.
Which is incredible on its own.
But it leaves you with a really profound question. What other incredible hidden maps of human kindness exist out there in the wild, being secretly charted and passed down by animals without us ever knowing we are the destination?
Wow. That is an incredible thought to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you navigate your own environments today, consider adopting a little of James's unconditional allowance. Whether dealing with a chaotic situation or just the people around you, sometimes the most profound thing you can do is just let them be exactly who they are. Take care, and we will see you next time.